All right. Good evening and good night. And welcome to the It's Your Perspective Talk Show. It is it's Thursday, April 17th, 2025, 8:01 p.m. This is the It's Your Perspective Talk Show podcast coming to you live from St. Croix, Virgin Islands. We are live every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. until 9 p.m. AST. I want to give a special shout out to Bingy Soup, still on special assignment. He'll be back here shortly. What else we got? We're using StreamYard. Got to give a shout out to StreamYard to bring this to you. We are simultaneously sending our stream through Facebook and YouTube right now. On Facebook, go to my personal page, which is I am David Christian, to see this live. And also on YouTube, just search for It's Your Perspective Talk Show. It'll pop up right there. Share the word, spread the word. Big things happening tonight. We're also on Twitter as well, or what's it called, X now, as VI Perspective. Tweet with us there. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment on both our Facebook and our YouTube channels. All this stuff is important to us. What else we got? Oh, and we're also, most importantly, we're on a road. The HR Perspective Talk Show podcast is on the road to 500 shows. Can you believe that? Soup and I have been grinding. We're tonight, as you can see, they're scrolling on the bottom there. We're at show 493, and we do have a special guest in the studio tonight. There she is. Welcome to the show, Jordan Schneider.
Thank you, David.
Some fun educational stuff for us tonight. We are going to be talking all things coral, and her company is Ceiba Strategies.
That's right.
Based right here in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, to be specific, right here in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. So she does a lot of stuff, man, but she got what she does, and then she's got some neat projects and some fair type stuff where she's talking to kids and all this other kind of stuff that she's going to share with us. But let's get right into it. So how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, man, long time coming. Finally got it worked out.
Yeah,
well, let's get into it. You're a St. Croix-based project management and grants development company. So just kind of get into all of this. We're going to be talking about coral, and so I guess kind of enlighten us with what coral is, and then kind of proceed into how you got into not liking cars, but liking coral.
Right. So I came to working in coral a little differently than most. So as you said at the top there, I'm really more of a project management and like program design company, and that also, like writes and produces and manages grants as well, both for my own projects, but also for others as well. And like, I came to St. Croix right in COVID, actually, and was just thinking I used to be a scuba diver, a dive master, living in, at the time, Charleston, South Carolina. And I came here just to check it out for it was supposed to be only 6 weeks. This is like December of 2020, and never left. So basically I, came here during COVID and just decided to set up a business for myself here. Not really a clue as to who my clients might be or the types of projects I might be getting into. But I knew I wanted to kind of, strike out on my own, work for myself, and live in a beautiful place where I could scuba dive. And that's pretty much how I started in St. Croix.
But what because a lot of people say that, I've heard people say that they come here and it was only supposed to be for a couple of weeks, but they ended up staying. So what was it about St. Croix that switched your mind from leaving and planning for 2 weeks? Now, I ain't going nowhere. I'm staying right here.
Well, it was December 2020. COVID was pretty bad stateside. And the vaccine was about to come out, and I got wind that it was going to kind of be here first. And actually I was dating someone long distance who I came here to check out the island with. And the house, he was looking for a house here, and that was going well. And he basically said, I'm looking for a house with you in mind. You know that, right?
Mhm.
So now we're married. Yeah, so it all just kind of worked out. It's a little bit of a dating story as well. Like we didn't want to go back home because COVID was raging and things were
Okay.
seemed a lot better here on the island. And it's beautiful. And there's so much to do. And we really started meeting people very quickly, as one does here. And just fell into a really awesome community that we never wanted to leave.
Okay.
And actually pretty quickly I got involved in corals and the coral community within a few months, actually. And that's actually what really started, it was a bonus, right? I got involved in the diving and coral community right away. And so like I said, I was a dive master working. I used to manage a scuba shop up in Charleston, and I heard about this, started diving, and I heard about this disease that had just arrived on the island. It's called Stony coral tissue loss disease. And through just like the dive community, I heard that there was a group of volunteer divers that were actually going out and administering treatment to help stop the progression of this disease on corals. Now, I didn't know corals. I did not know their names. Like, I knew what a coral was basically, but I joined the volunteer fire brigade. Basically, I did not realize there was basically an emergency on us at the time that I arrived. And so I started volunteering and diving like twice a week, pretty regularly, going out and doing these disease treatments. And that is how I started learning about all this, all the threats to coral, really getting involved in all the projects. So that's why I never left. I got sucked in really quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. How far down were you going to, I mean, was it something that you had to sort of pour on the coral, or, I mean, how did that work a little bit more specifically?
Yeah. So like, they've learned a lot. Researchers, especially at UVI, have been really leading on this, and they have learned a lot about this disease. So what we know now is that it started in 2014 in Florida, and they think they can trace it back to a dredging project at the port of Miami, and where they were like deepening the harbor basically, and kicked up, they think, some toxic sludge or something that was buried in the silt there, and kind of kicked it up into the water column. And then this disease started like marching down the Florida Keys, and then it hopscotched all down the Caribbean chain, and it eventually got here in 2019. So it took a while to get here. But so what they think it is actually a viral pathogen. Well, so why don't I back up and explain what corals are and how they get sick? So corals are basically related to sea anemones or jellyfish. They start their lives as tiny, like microscopic larvae that swim around in the ocean, and they are looking for a place that looks good, smells good, sounds good to settle on hard. What they're looking for is nice, clean, hard rock to settle and attach. And then at that point, they basically turn into a polyp that looks like an upside down jellyfish, and they start to feed. And within a few days, the polyps actually clear just like a jellyfish is. And then within a few days, they will actually absorb these microscopic symbiotic algae that give corals their color. And not only do they give corals their various different colors, because each type of coral has a different type of symbiotic algae that it likes, and that will colonize it uniquely. And that's what gives each coral their unique color. And the symbiotic algae will actually colonize the polyp and allow it to photosynthesize. So corals can actually eat and survive in two ways. They can catch plankton with their tentacles, just like jellyfish or sea anemones, but they also photosynthesize, just like plants do.
Okay, I got you.
So back to disease. So what they think it is it's like some sort of viral pathogen that might be carried in the symbiotic algae that actually infects the coral, and then it causes the polyp to just die and fall off the skeleton.
Mm.
So it just within a couple of weeks, even if a coral, which takes even a coral might have taken 100 years to grow, 200 years to grow, 300 years to grow. They basically keep growing. It can die within 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Disease. All the tissue, all that beautiful live tissue just falls off, and you just see the bright white skeleton underneath. But what they figured out is that you can actually stop. And what it does is it starts as like a white spot on the coral, and it just eats it, the legion just grows and kind of marches across the colony, and it can start in several blotches. It can look like spots, like a Dalmatian basically, and they all kind of grow together and everything just dies. But if you can treat it with amoxicillin paste, literally veterinary grade amoxicillin paste, applied in a special goop via a syringe that is extruded from the syringe and then pressed into the coral around the edges of the lesion line, it actually stops the progression of the disease across the coral about 85% of the time. So high success rate. Problem is we're treating as what we think is we're treating as a secondary infection, not the viral load, not the thing that's actually causing the lesion in the first place. So
okay.
So, but it does help. I mean, if you go back and you keep treating corals, like it does preserve that live tissue. It buys time for scientists to basically figure out what's going on, and researchers to figure out what's going on and come up with new methods. And we have to the idea is to save as much live tissue down there as you can.
Okay. So how far down are we talking?
All corals can get, so this disease affects 60% of all reef building hard corals. And these are the ones that actually kind of build in big boulders or big plates, not the soft corals, not the fan type, more delicate corals that you see, the ones that actually build the reef. Okay. And that's why this disease is so insidious, because if you are destroying the reef building corals, then your reef over time starts to degrade. Those corals are no longer putting down skeleton. They're no longer putting down mass on the reef. So they can just, a storm will come by, they'll break off, right? If they're, eventually erosion will happen and the reef will just erode away, which leaves our shorelines a lot more vulnerable to things like storms and floods and storm surge. Like from hurricanes or from major weather events, when all that water gets pushed onto shore, the reef is one of the main things that protects, like Christiansted Harbor, for example.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I knew that corals were important, but I just, when I first arrived here, when I first started treating, I remember going down and diving, and it looked like a Jackson Pollock painting on the reef. Like somebody had taken a white paintbrush loaded with white paint and just spattered it all over the reef. You looked around and you saw white spots as far as you could see. And so now the disease, it swept through like a wildfire. It's actually the closest thing I can think to compare it to. It swept through. And nowadays, when we go out and we do these monthly disease treatments, it's actually hard to even find coral that is still alive to treat. So and that's where everything is also just kind of covered in algae, kind of covered in sediment, covered in dirt. You don't see, if you weren't there before, just a couple years before, or if you don't know how to recognize like the patterns in a brain coral, like, oh, that used to be a brain coral. You just think it's a bunch of rocks down there covered with algae. You don't know what was there before if you've never seen it. But I remember seeing it, and it was just infected a couple of years ago.
Okay, so we have a comment here, comment/question. Yeah. If you look at your screen, Jordan, you'll see it. You'll see the comment there.
Oh, that's a great question. So, so the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, the Coastal Zone Management is a division within Coastal Department of Planning and Natural Resources, and they were aware of this. They were monitoring this in like 2019, 2018, before it got to St. Croix, and they actually, through the help of like their federal government partners, like NOAA liaisons, they actually did have a plan. They actually did develop a plan based on what they were learning in what they were seeing in Florida. And they, had all these posters out about like sanitizing your gear, when you go from dive site to dive site to try to reduce transmission. But this has impacted, it's all the way down in the ABCs now, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, it's all over the Caribbean now. It just swept through. There's not, it's a little bit like fighting a wildfire with a garden hose. Like it's so labor intensive to go out there and actually treat an individual coral. And the scale of this mass mortality event was really, really staggering. But so that is the agency locally that is monitoring these and issues and working on them. So
it's just safe to assume that you guys are working together.
Yes, actually, yes. Thank you for leading me to that. So that's actually, the Department of Planning and Natural Resources actually funded my first project. They were my first client in St. Croix in the territory. So obviously, applied for a grant, a small grant to organize and run the strike teams that operate in territorial waters. And I have a couple of teams that were going out once a month in St. Thomas, and two teams in St. Croix and two teams in St. Thomas, and going out and doing these monthly disease treatments. And that was funded by Department of Planning and Natural Resources. And they really helped get my business started, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's actually through that work, I met some other amazing people in the coral community, namely the people who own the Featherleaf Inn and Thriving Islands, which is an eco hotel out on the west side of St. Croix and Butler Bay.
What is it called?
So the hotel is called the Featherleaf Inn. It's an eco hotel.
Yes. Okay, I know it.
Beach. And this couple, Karina and Ryan, they bought it maybe 6 years ago or something, and restored it. And they are all about restoration. So they did architectural restoration on the property. They are part of the Forestry Stewards Program. They do a lot of tree planting on the property. And Karina is a marine scientist, so she was already making plans to do a coral restoration area right there in Butler Bay in front of the hotel. Okay. And for another reason, not just because it was in front of the hotel, but because it was actually really well situated, nice and shallow. There were a lot of other reasons that it made sense to try to do restoration there. And so she had already been working on that, and she was one of my strike team field leaders for the West End dives. So I found out she was doing this, and then another opportunity came up for another pilot project through the Department of Planning and Natural Resources to do a 2-year coral restoration project out there. And so that is how we actually started doing coral restoration on the west side of St. Croix. So not just disease treatments and reactive, but also making new coral.
Okay.
And actually trying to build the biomass back up. That needs to be on the reef to get that.
So does the coral get with hurricanes? Does it get destroyed, or is it coral resilient enough to sort of deal with that?
That's a great question. Both. so the corals that are the big hard reef building corals, they when they get really big, they can withstand quite a bit of energy, storm energy. They can reduce it by 97%, wave energy hitting the shore. If you have a healthy reef out there, it is very, very good structural protection. And actually, that's one of the reasons that in recent years, local governments and the federal government even started recognizing coral reefs as critical infrastructure, like that needs to be protected and reinforced to protect life and property. And that's actually how Puerto Rico got several $1 million from FEMA after Hurricane Maria to go back and restore their reefs, because they have so much property there in along San Juan that it's basically, instead of building a seawall, right? Instead of investing in a seawall, you invest in coral restoration to prevent the water from getting there in the first place. So that's pretty cool.
So is coral all the way around St. Croix? Is that kind of how, or just in certain areas?
We have quite a few reefs, actually. And there's a lot of different organizations that are like working in like what they call like priority restoration sites. So there's Long Reef, the big one that goes all along like Christiansted Harbor. And, you know, of course, you've got like Cane Bay has a lot of structure out there. The west side, I mean, yeah, we are kind of surrounded by coral reefs. Like we have, you know, yeah, we have, there's quite a bit of coral out there. Oh, but you asked about like, can it withstand? There's actually certain species of coral that are intentionally, they've actually evolved to be broken off in strong wave energy, because that's actually how they reproduce. That's actually how they propagate. And that the particular species I'm talking about is called elkhorn coral. It's the orange coral that literally looks like moose antlers or elkhorn. You've seen it in a lot of iconic pictures. But they grow in the really shallow parts of the reef, and wave energy will actually like they're actually evolved to have wave energy kind of break off pieces of their, you know, lobes basically of the coral, and it'll attach to a nearby rock, wedge itself, and then it'll attach and then grow a new coral. And they grow, so because they're in those high energy wave zones, they are they grow fast, and they're actually a really good species for propagation and for like building reef biomass. And that's what we're doing out of Butler Bay.
Okay. So does coral help with, you know, like, I guess to defend against like sea creatures or like certain types of fish, or you know what I'm saying? Or is it just a whole different thing going on there?
So it's not defense against fish necessarily. So what it is because you've seen a picture of a coral reef, right? You've got boulders, plates, starlight, you know, flower-like, I mean, and other ones that grow in big pillars or big columns. And there's a lot of shape to a healthy reef. And the reason that's important, it's like a rainforest of the sea, basically. There's all these little places where all these little niches that like small fish can hide and grow. So even your sharks, even your big game fish, like, mahi-mahi, the ones we eat, mahi-mahi, that we find that are free swimming in the ocean more when you go deep sea fishing, they all start somewhere. They all grow in these like little nursery grounds that are created by a healthy reef, where they have these little crevices where they can like grow until they're big enough to go out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they create essential fish habitat. So when you don't have a reef, you don't have fish. So that's why it's important for our economy.
Okay. So, I mean, is there a lot of work to be done with prevention and these other things? I mean, is a lot of work?
Tremendous.
Okay.
Tremendous. So,
I mean, are we at any kind of, quote unquote, life-threatening situation if we don't get this done quickly, or, by a certain, 2028 kind of thing?
So corals grow very, very slowly, about an inch a year. So when you think about like the Great Barrier Reef or a structure like that, I mean, that took 40 million years to grow that big. And like I said earlier, a single disease that we dredge up from Florida can wipe out a coral within a matter of weeks, that even if it took hundreds of years to grow. Okay. So yes, it is an uphill battle for sure, but there's a lot of technology, a lot of passion, a lot of energy being poured into this research. So one of the ways that coral practitioners have figured out that you can speed up the process and grow more coral is through something called fragmentation. So you take a piece of coral, even like a boulder coral or a brain coral, one of the reef building ones that not necessarily elkhorn coral, because those grow fast anyway, but what they do is called microfragmentation. So they'll actually cut it up into smaller pieces and then put it on like a clay disc, and the cutting it actually triggers a wound response, I would say, that actually triggers the tissue to want to grow faster, like the polyps to kind of grow faster to cover the wound. And then they fuse together. As long as it's from the same colony and they're genetically identical, they don't fight with each other. They'll actually fuse together about 10 times faster than they would otherwise. And corals, when they reproduce when they reach a certain size or a surface area. So if you can have several fragments, that grow together and fuse together about 10 times faster to get to like a reproductive size like this, you can, kind of speed up the process of them being able to actually naturally reproduce.
Okay.
So that's one new kind of method. And scientists are always coming up with these experiments and new methods, which is why it's so important to have universities like the UVI working on this.
So real quick, so you mentioned UVI. So, how are they involved? I mean, what are they doing? Are you guys like partners on the approach to deal with this, or are they doing a lot of the testing?
So UVI works. I mean, yes. I mean, they have a very busy lab, and they are. I mean, so they do have they focus a lot on disease, but they're also constantly testing new restoration approaches and new responses to threats like bleaching. For example, I know that they did a pretty cool study where they put so corals, when you do propagation out in the ocean, it goes on these trees that are kind of clipped. They're in the water column. They're like made out of PVC a lot of times, and they'll kind of be clipped to these almost like PVC Christmas tree looking structures that are, that's where they grow until they can be big enough to be outplanted directly onto the reef. They actually put them on a pulley system. And when we had really, really hot ocean temperatures, they actually pulleyed, dragged the trees down
to a
deeper depth. Yeah, to where it's like colder. Like the idea being that the water is a little cooler, that they're not going to be so subject to bleaching. But actually, I'm glad you brought up UVI, so I should circle back to the big project that I'm really excited. I mean, Ceiba's been working on these various projects and responses to coral reef threats and emergencies for a couple of years through the strike teams by hiring, local divers basically, and giving them opportunities to go out there and with us to treat. Monitoring for a new species of invasive pulse coral, which I'll circle back to. But the restoration project, that seed project that Department of Planning and Natural Resources helped us pilot for 2 years in Butler Bay, that actually we leveraged that to apply to NOAA for a $2.3 million grant that is going to last 3 years. So now, and it's even bigger, right? So we're going to continue our work to propagate elk-horn coral in Butler Bay. We're also going to continue to conduct spawning experiments, and that's where we actually, instead of cloning corals by fragmentation, which is the process I described earlier, we kind of, chop them up and then create a new coral based on the same genetic material. That's basically cloning. You actually go out and capture the gametes when they spawn in a big net, and you capture them from the parent colonies and then literally mix them together in a lab to fertilize the little larvae that I talked at the top of the hour. And you actually can create like little tiny babies that way. So that like enhances genetic diversity. And so one of the things we did with the Butler Bay project that DPNR funded was we did that. We went out 30 minutes after the sunset, 11 days after the full moon in May, when all these corals were going to go off, and they did. And we got these babies, but we were there to try to experiment with low cost methods. So we bought some sewing machines and some mosquito netting, and used like funnels and like weights from the hardware store. So the idea is to we were experimenting with low cost methods for spawning that could be replicated in communities where there's not a lot of resources, right? Which is actually where corals tend to grow. Corals grow where there's like not a lot of people, not a lot of resources, tiny little islands. I mean, so it's great to have a giant, like a big university or a big on land based facility where you can do all these experiments, but sometimes you got to pop up a lab and try to work with the resources that are available. And so that's one thing that we actually were able to do with materials from Home Depot. we successfully did a spawning operation and grew some babies. So we're going to continue to do that. And then the next piece of this project is actually addressing land-based sources of pollution and threats that to the coral reef. So, there's only so much you can do in the water. You have to address other stressors that are contributing to the decline of reefs. So we're doing like a ridge to reef approach to restoration, where we're actually looking at the watershed in Butler Bay and doing a professional study and saying, okay, why is there so much sediment that flows into the reef after, into the ocean after a major rain event? So how can where are the problem areas where we can maybe put in a swale or like a bioretention pond, or maybe we can plant some trees, plant some mangroves to help filter some of that before it gets to Butler Bay. And that piece is an area where we are going to be engaging the neighbors in the Butler Bay watershed and saying, hey, it turns out there's potentially a project on your property that can really help the reef. Will you work with us to help do this neighborhood scale, small restoration project where you can actually contribute to the health of your local reef? And again, through the learnings of those processes, that's where we want to try to replicate that in other parts of USVI. Yeah. And then UVI is actually also the third piece of that. So there's the coral restoration, the land-based restoration, and then there's the K through 12 educational curriculum that we're developing.
Yes.
So, and that's what UVI is helping with. So one of the challenges we have is we are a tiny island with very low population, and to do this work, it's a lot of work, and we need more local people who can have jobs and careers doing this, and opportunities. And there's just not a lot of opportunities for a lot of local Virgin Islanders to see themselves working in restoration. So one of the things we're doing is creating mentorship programs around a curriculum that actually starts at the 5th grade. We're doing 2 versions of a resilient coastlines curriculum, one for 5th through 8th grade and one for high school level.
High school level, okay.
And the resilient coastlines curriculum is going to be, it is going to cover mangroves, native coastal plants, and corals. So all 3 elements of a coastal ecosystem. And as part of this project, we're also building native coastal plant nurseries at 4 local area schools.
Okay, I see that there.
To give these students a hands-on opportunity to grow mangroves, and grow and learn about native coastal plants, in addition to the coral piece of the curriculum, and then actually go on field trips where they get to do student-led outplanting projects and monitoring projects. And UVI is designing that for us.
Okay. So our junior high and high school students, do you find that they have a real strong interest in this kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you went to college, what would you major in? To be.
Well, that's kind of the idea, right? Not everybody wants to be marine biologists. The idea is to show that there's the ridge to reef approach. Coastal restoration is bigger than coral restoration. So we're basically widening the lens on what coastal restoration means, so that even students who might necessarily not be divers or like to, want to be a marine biologist, you can also be a botanist. You can be a watershed expert. I mean, there's all kinds of native coastal plant grower. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities. And through this resilient coastlines curriculum, we want to expose these young Virgin Islanders to as many of these different career paths as possible. And then also do what we can to start a pipeline that of opportunity that starts with interest in the classroom, and that goes through mentorship and internship, and then eventually contract opportunities. So the pipeline is going to take a while to build, but we're starting it. That's what this project is about.
What are they as far as corals go? What are they like in school, junior high and high school? I mean, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but what are they when they talk about that? do you know what they're teaching the kids about corals in school? Or is it sort of a very kind of high level? And if you just have an interest, you kind of gravitate to it. If you don't, you're a mechanic or a carpenter.
You know what? I'm going to find out. I actually don't. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know, because I do know that schools have a lot they have to cover to be accredited. To get credit for the students and be ready for standardized testing. And so that's why we're involving UVI, because we want to make sure that this program fits in with those accreditation standards that will basically encourage the teachers to want to teach it because it actually does serve the students. So that's actually one of the reasons we actually have an advisory board of local educators from the St. Croix community who are there to guide project decisions and there to help guide the development of this curriculum so that we understand what's clicking, what's not clicking, what are the barriers to learning about this. And so we're really excited to have a really strong advisory board guiding us.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about Jordan, I guess when we first started talking 2-3 days back, you said that you were at a fair.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. And, I know it's already passed, but it sounds like it was a good, you said.
Well, there's another one coming up this Saturday in St. Thomas. There's always a fair going on. There's always something going on. So that was the 32nd annual Eco Fair hosted by St. Croix Environmental Association. And a lot of the, local environmental practitioners were there, had tables, and just had activities for the kids, especially ones where they got to run around a lot because it was 4th through 6th graders. Mm-hmm. So that was the Eco Fair that was hosted by and they do it every year, and it was at St. Croix Botanic Gardens. And I also attended their Bio Blitz, which was at the beach. I forget what the name of the beach is. Oh, Southgate. Southgate Beach.
Yes.
Yes. And kind of the same thing. My goal is to support and be present for the activities of the events and activities that are hosted by the environmental educators. I just think it's really important to show up, show up and have a table, have an activity, support that. And Ceiba, my company, that's what I'm trying to foster, because my goal is I know I just talked about a grant, a single, a one-off grant that's for 3 years to build capacity in St. Croix. But that is actually my mission as a company, is to build local capacity so that people here can have the tools and the skills and the resources to take advantage of funding opportunities, design a great program and project, track everything, be compliant, especially if it's a federal grant. And so that's my kind of overall mission. So my goal is for all of the people who are working together in this project, including the advisory board, members, organizations. Hey, if I come up with a great spreadsheet, I'm going to share it. Let's if we have a great way of doing something, if we've got a tool or a process that makes our job just a little bit easier, let's share that information. Okay. So that's the ethos that's kind of guiding this entire project. Okay. And my company in general.
Yeah. Now the other thing that I found interesting too is the name of your company. You said it was Ceiba.
Ceiba, yeah.
Is a local tree?
It is, yeah.
Okay. I did know that.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about how you ended up picking that.
That's the monkey no climb. Oh, actually, no. Actually, I just found out the monkey no climb is different than them. So it's the kapok tree, silk cotton. Okay. Silk cotton or kapok tree. Monkey no climb is actually the sandbox tree, which I learned on an environmental tour. So, but yeah, so the Ceiba is the scientific name. It's like Ceiba pentandra or something for that tree. And you see them, they have really cool, when they're young, especially, have green bark, and that's because the bark itself is actually photosynthetic. And it actually it doesn't just photosynthesize through the leaves, it actually does it through the bark itself. And they're just the tallest tree in the rainforest typically. They're just really cool. They kind of are a keystone species. So a lot of things grow on them. A lot of things rely on them for their own like survival.
Survival,
and
okay.
They're like a keystone species that really helps the ecosystem around them run well. And so that is why I named my company.
Okay. Sounds good to me. The other thing I wanted to ask you about too was the Ceiba Strike Team project, and I think you kind of mentioned a little bit, but I guess I'm fascinated with the word strike team. Some group of people just go on, to achieve a specific task, fully loaded, armed to the T.
Yeah, it is.
But
It's emergency response. It's a targeted emergency response team.
Okay.
And I didn't come up with the name. Actually, the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, CZM, Coastal Zone Management, they were already calling it strike team before I even got there.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie, that might be something that was attractive to me in the recruitment of like why I wanted to join this team. It's like, oh, that sounds cool. Let's do that.
Yeah, strike force. Yeah, that sounds.
It is cool. There's a lot of really great people that I met, lifelong friends now that I met through this team. And now I've got anywhere from 15 to 25 divers on an active roster at any given time doing these missions. And now our mission, so it was disease treatment, and circling back to disease and the state of the disease now, it's really calmed down because there's not as much coral to transmit. So now we're shifting towards monitoring for pulse coral, and which I'll actually show a video here in a second if you don't mind, if we've got time, because we need eyes in the water.
Sure.
But then also like if anchor damage happens or a boat runs aground and knocks a bunch of coral loose, somebody needs to go out and pick those up and re-cement them to the reef. So I am working on a training program to have basically well-trained lay divers be qualified to do that kind of work, because that next time we have a hurricane, especially that's like boats running aground at a massive scale, basically that level of damage. So you need you're going to need at some point as many bodies in the water as you can to set things to rights. So I'm trying to grow the strike team training program beyond just disease treatments to actually learning how to cement coral, how to wedge it properly, how to do an evaluation of a damage area. So slightly more scientific, but not anything like what UVI might do or Nature Conservancy might do. So we're more of the kind of volunteer fire brigade level response, and then they're the more scientific response. But I think there's a place for everyone.
So the call to strike comes from DPNR?
Well, that's who that is who I run my teams for, is through Department of Planning and Natural Resources. I'm their primary, contractor for that. But UVI has its own strike team that they'll respond if something happens in, say, Brewers Bay, or out of Buck Island, National Park Service has its own strike team, and they will respond to, what I mean? So there's several strike teams on the island. I just happen to run the one that operates in territorial waters that, the territorial government kind of sets the priorities of what we're working on.
Understood. And the other question that I wanted to ask too is, you talk about being a scuba diver. So you're a licensed scuba diver. So talk a little bit about that too. I mean, so obviously you have to be able to dive and understand the mechanics of diving. I've never done it. I guess you guys put on the tank and the whole 9 yards. I've never done that. But talk a little bit about that. You're licensed and talk the training and after you finish training, are you now ready to join the strike team, or do you need to have a certain amount of hours? Just kind of enlighten us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I actually don't require dive master or instructor level type certification. It's really just about your level of comfort in the water. So there's various recreational levels, like open water. You can go to 60 feet. You're a relatively new diver. Some people are open water divers their entire lives and never go any farther, and that's fine. But they go to like Indonesia, and they've dove all over the world, but they never decide to go farther in their diving certification level. There's also advanced open water, where you can go a little deeper. So you understand kind of the physiology of what happens to you when you're at, say, 80, 90 feet, as opposed to 60 feet. And you understand there's more safety things you have to be aware of when you're diving that deep. Or in advanced open water, you also get navigation skills. So how to use a compass, just kind of how to orient yourself underwater. So there's lots of, what is advanced open water? There's like 5 kind of skills that you achieve. One is, I know it's been forever since I've been a dive master, but it's like deep water navigation, buoyancy, like practicing like making sure you're not like a cork, like down in the water, you're able to maintain. And that's really important in coral work. So I require advanced open water, and I require people to basically demonstrate a pretty good level of buoyancy, especially also handling like a syringe or a bag of cement. So like also multitasking a little bit. And I have field leaders that are experienced that help me evaluate people.
Okay.
But yeah, people like, and we're always, like I'm always welcoming, people to, if they expressed interest, to join the strike team. Maybe we have a pretty full roster right now, but there's always some turnover. There's always opportunities. So if people are interested in learning more, they can go to my website, Ceiba, CEIBA, CeibaStrategies.com. They can also email me, Jordan, at the same URL, CeibaStrategies.com. And yeah, I can tell them about our program and those opportunities.
Okay.
But let me get back to pulse coral, if I may leverage your show for a second, and get some eyes in the water. So I want to talk to people, if they're listening, watching the video. There is a highly invasive new threat, like species of soft coral, or an octocoral, that's from Asia, from Indonesia or the Red Sea. And nothing eats it here. It doesn't have any natural predators. So what it does is it grows like crazy over everything in a thick carpet. It'll smother an entire reef system. It'll grow over live coral. It'll even grow over top of sponges. You can find it attached to mangrove roots. It can grow, on pillars, pylons. It's really bad. And it's already in Puerto Rico. So we're monitoring very closely what's happening in Puerto Rico, on the south side of Puerto Rico. It's called pulse coral, because it literally, without any ocean current, it naturally goes like this. It pulses. That's why they call it pulse coral. And so it's really obvious, like what it looks like. But I want to show your viewers. If you're a diver, if you're a snorkeler, I've done a presentation about this to the Fisheries Advisory Council. Like fishermen might bring it up in their nets, and what happens is it breaks off. Even a tiny little piece that breaks off, it can plant itself within a couple of days and then reproduce within 10. And so it's like the tantan of the sea. Do you know what a tantan is? The trees, the tantans that are everywhere. It's like the tantan of the sea. It will completely take over a reef. So in the USVI, Department of Planning and Natural Resources, they're really asking everybody to keep an eye out for this. So I'm going to share my screen, if you don't mind, and I just want to show a couple of little videos, just to get this in front of people.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to do the entire screen, and we're going to go here. Share. All right. I've got like 3 little short clips, and I will go full screen here for this. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is it right here. You can see my cursor. So I'm going to play it, and it's very small, a lot small, and it blends in with the substrate. But do you see how it opens and closes like that? You see how it moves?
Yeah.
So even if there's no current or no it moves. So here, and it's a lot smaller than you might think. I mean, but it kind of opens and closes. When it's disturbed, it'll stop, but this is what we're looking for. But that telltale pulsing, if you see that, and it grows in seagrass, grows on rubble, it floats around, it spreads really easily. So we're asking people to not try to like remove it if they see it, because it can spread and can cause the problem to be worse. So we're asking people to like contact, DPNR basically when they see it.
But is it dangerous? Is it poisonous? Or
No. I mean, no, it's not. It will grow. It'll destroy. I mean,
yeah, if it's really spreading all over the place like you say it is, it destroy everything else.
Yeah, it'll completely cover the reef. They have videos of it in Puerto Rico right now, and there's no fish. You can see it's just a massive part of this stuff, and there's no fish. It's like a desert.
Yeah,
in those areas. It's very sad.
Looks like a horror movie.
See this stuff, and if you see it pulsing, we want to know about it anywhere in the VI, because the strike team divers need to get out there and evaluate it, tag it, try to figure out how to deal with it. So yeah, thanks for letting me share.
Okay, so this thing you said came from where now?
So there's two species. There's two species we have to worry about. There's one from Indonesia and one from Red Sea.
Okay.
Red Sea. So the stuff that they have in Puerto Rico right now is from the Red Sea, and they think it's probably from an aquarium release. Like somebody had this stuff is it's mesmerizing, right? You look at it, and people in the aquarium trade love putting it in their tanks, but then they quickly want to get rid of it because it takes over everything and it's really hard to manage. So unfortunately, people will actually dump this in the ocean, and it just completely takes over everything. So it's in Cuba, it's in the south side of Puerto Rico. We're waiting for it to show up here. And as soon as somebody sees it here, then we can kind of unlock some funding to do something about it, but we have to see it first and identify it. There's actually this other species, the other places that this is crazy. The species that's from Indonesia, somebody intentionally brought it to Venezuela in 2005. It's called eunomia, and they brought it intentionally to start farming it for the aquarium trade in 2005. And now it covers 1,000 square miles. 1,000 square miles off the coast of Venezuela.
Okay.
It's a catastrophe. So we want to try to catch this stuff and try to eradicate it and control it before it gets out of control here. That's why we're trying to get the look out.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is serious. I mean, was this like a state of emergency type of thing? I mean, is it that serious?
Well, our friends in Puerto Rico advised us, because we go to workshops and talk to them a lot, and they say, you guys need to be treating it like it's an emergency now, even if it's not spotted yet. You need to be communicating about it. You need to have all kinds of eyes in the water. I mean, you need to be working on this now like it's an emergency, because once it's there, it could be too late. So we're trying to take that to heart, which is why I'm trying to talk about it more. But
do you have any other pictures of other things that you can show real quick?
Oh, I didn't have a lot ready. If I had known that I was able to share a screen, I definitely would have. Oh, you know what? Actually, our coral babies. I have some coral babies. So these are ones that we grew in our lab. I'll show you. Do have some these are a year old. Let me show you. These are from last year. Share screen. Here we go. So remember how I said we basically bought materials from Home Depot and captured some spawn and mixed it in a bucket and then reared them? This is after a year. We went out and got some. We we brought them out to the nursery, had them in these like little protective cages so that fish wouldn't get at them. A lot of them died because it was a very hot summer. But yeah, aren't they beautiful? Like here's a couple more.
Yeah, it looks like kind
yeah,
of glow in the
these
dark kind of thing.
Yeah, so this is a single polyp. It's about the size of a pencil eraser. Yeah, and so this is under a microscope, under like basically UV light. So these are like just one polyp after a year. I told you corals grow really slowly, and they're very. So here's it with just plain, like not, no black light. And it's on like the edge of a little concrete muffin tin cup. And there it is. Look, so here's one here and one here, and this thing is, and there is that puck.
Yeah, I've seen those.
So that gives you an idea of how big these are. So we actually had a Mother's Day event at Featherleaf Inn where people got to see this under a microscope. We had a Mother's Day event for the Coral Lab because it's like, hey, we got our babies. Come see our babies.
Jordan,
that was last year. So
go back a little bit, Jordan. So what? Go forward there. I wanted to get to the 3. Not that one. Yeah, right here. So is this 3 types of coral here? I've seen.
Yeah. Well, not. 2. Okay, so this is an adult of what I just showed you. This is an adult.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah. Okay. So this is an adult. It's called grooved brain coral. I guess you can see why. There is another species of coral right here, mustard hill coral. This is just I don't know my soft corals very well. I think this is a soft coral or a Gorgonian, some sort of thing. I don't know. I only know the stony ones, the hard ones. Okay. But yeah.
But I think we've all probably seen these in some shape or form, around. So just curious.
Yeah. So, but yeah, they're very beautiful. So we and it's just such a great educational tool too when we can have it under the microscope. And so we'll continue our spawning operations. It's definitely harder now that the ocean temperatures are rising so high. It's just not a friendly environment in the ocean. And we do all of our work in the ocean. We do not have a facility like they have at Nature Conservancy at Little Princess. It's all happening underwater in the ocean. We brought them out to the lab temporarily to show people, but all of our coral work is actually in the ocean because it's low cost. That's the point.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. All right. Jordan Schneider, thank you so much, man. I've learned.
Next time I'll come with more pictures and video. Now that I know I can share a screen, we'll give you more updates.
Oh, we will definitely have you back. Jordan is a first-time guest, and she can come back anytime. Just let me know, and we'll get you on the schedule, and we'll make the whole show just some fantastic videos of things maybe that you've captured, seen, X, Y, Z, ABC. You know what I mean? But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Can I mention one other partner in this grant that I did not mention? We also have eco schools. The 4 schools that. So I mentioned UVI, I mentioned Thriving Islands, I mentioned Ceiba, but like a key element, the key people who are going to be implementing this at the 4 schools is the Virgin Islands Conservation Society through their Eco Schools program. And it's Claudio Marco, Juanita Hardin, Eulalie Rivera, and Complex High School, CTEC. So there's a very active, Eco Schools program there, and they are going to be our pilot student cohort. So I just wanted to give them a quick shout out. I know we got really deep into corals, but acknowledging those project partners is really important.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Thank you so much. Right. It's been a good show tonight. Good informational stuff. Hopefully everybody will join a group or, something that deals with coral, get more involved. I guess the more the merrier. Yeah, but also it sounds like we sort of have a slight threat coming this way, and we have to pay attention. So if you're out there snorkeling and you see
pulse coral,
jump out the water right away and contact Jordan and tell her where you saw it, so she can send the strike team over there.
Yes, appreciate you. Thank you so much, David, for having me on.
Okay, On that note, this is the It's Your Perspective talk show every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. until. Most importantly, we are on the road to 500 shows. We have just completed show 493. We got another show lined up for next week, Tuesday. On that note, we're out. Everybody have a great evening. Talk to you soon. Peace.